Auburn's got a ton of talented newcomers coming in who can start, who will play, and who may redshirt in 2023.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Ferg Friday to all who celebrate. Justin Ferguson with the Auburn Observer joining us. Ferg, I want to play a little bit of a game today, if that's cool with you. Let's call it Start, Play, or Redshirt, and look at Auburn's 2023 commits / signees. So we'll include some names that are guys that are committed that are planning to sign in February, like Jeremiah Cobb, but what their path to playing time could be. And, look, we've talked about it time and time again, this Hugh Freeze transition period that we're watching right now. The roster that he inherited is not great. And so we'll see kind of what some instant impact players could potentially be. So let's start with the guy that I think is the best player in this class, Keldric Faulk, the 4-star. Some places will have him as a defensive lineman. Some places will have him as an edge. You may see him as an outside linebacker. We'll see. But in your mind, Keldric Faulk, start, play, or redshirt? Which category are you putting him in?
I'm going to put him in play. Wouldn't be surprised if start is an option just because Auburn doesn't have a ton of edge guys on their roster. I think they could really use another one. They got Elijah McAllister from Vanderbilt, but I feel like they could use some more. To me, Keldric Faulk is very similar to Dylan Brooks, and in the fact that played at a little bit of a smaller school in high school. He's got all the physical tools that you need to succeed. And it's like guys who make that jump from maybe not as high as level of high school competition to the SEC may take them a little bit longer. So I think he needs some polish. I think he needs some time, but he's exactly what you want as an edge rusher for Auburn. I think he's got all the tools, physically. And, here's the thing, to be from such a small place like Highland Home and be a high 4-star prospect,
hard.
You've got to be showing something. You got to be showing something not only with what you do on Friday nights, but what you do in these camps and what you do in these combines. So I think Auburn just needs anybody who can help them out, especially at the edge rusher position. They're going to be changing some things on that defensive front because of the new system. So start wouldn't stun me, but I do think he's a little different in that he might need a little bit more time just because he's a guy who's making a pretty big jump.
Already bigger than Dylan Brooks. That's my biggest concern with Dylan Brooks. He's a big guy. I feel like Dylan Brooks should be bigger at this point in his career than he is. But that's what we're dealing with. I haven't talked to you since Auburn added McAllister. Do you like the former Vandy edge player? Yeah,
it's a good pickup. I think, a guy who doesn't have a ton of stats, but to me, can he be a Marcus Bragg for you? And like Marcus Bragg came in and played some big minutes for Auburn this past season, made some impact plays. Dude has been in the SEC for a while and is looking to try to get on the map a little bit bigger with his last year of eligibility. I think it's a great pickup, and you will take any edge rusher with experience that you can get right now.
Yeah, I'm going to put Keldric Faulk in the potential start category. Ferg, I'm really high on him. We'll see. I think it's going to come down to him or McAllister when it's all said and done, and they may both kind of play similar snaps. One may be the official starter, one may be a rotation piece, but I think we're going to see a lot of them. All right, Darren Reed, the 6'4", 270-pound 4-star defensive lineman. I've got him as play simply because I think he's going to back up Marcus Harris, probably.
Yeah, I think your interior defensive lineman right now, any of those guys can have a potential to play. Defensive line, you can get on the field a little earlier. I know the last staff didn't play a lot of young guys up front. I think that's going to be different moving forward. But yeah, Darren Reed.
It has to be.
Yeah,
you don't have enough bodies.
Darren Reed, big dude, formerly committed to LSU. He's from right down the road in Columbus. I think any of those guys with those in the defensive front, you want to have a deep rotating defensive line. You're going to need some of these young guys to step up. And Darren Reed's in a position where Auburn absolutely needed some guys.
Kayin Lee, probably my favorite prospect other than Jeremiah Cobb in this class, the 4-star cornerback flip from Ohio State. I've got him at play with the potential of starting by the end of the year.
Kayin Lee, it's going to be interesting to see what Auburn does at corner moving forward. DJ James still weighing his options. He's got that Senior Bowl invite. Was one of the highest rated corners in the SEC this year. Yeah. I think if he decided to strike his NFL stock when it's at its highest, it would be a smart move. Obviously, Nehemiah Pritchett could come back for another year, but he went through senior day stuff, so not expecting him to come back. But like, they've got corners, they've definitely got safeties. They're going to need guys to step up at that corner spot and move some dudes around. Corner nickel. Kayin Lee obviously is a guy who's very, very talented. Ohio State thought highly of him. Auburn's able to flip him. You need young defensive backs to play every year. I think back to J.D. Rim playing this past season. I think back to all the young safeties that have played over the last couple of years. You never have too many defensive backs, and you always like to throw them into the fire early. He's definitely in that mix.
So you got him in the play category?
Sure. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do like that. That's right. And, you've got guys like Austin Osbury, who were really highly rated guys who didn't play as much. So your results may vary on young defensive backs, but he definitely, if you're projecting out, he seems like he'd be in that category.
Let's lump the next two guys together. Sylvester Smith, the safety, Terrance Love, the safety, both 4-star guys. I mean, you just play so many defensive backs, and you're going to put these are the type of players that you put on special teams. I think both of these guys see the field. I'm seeing more and more chatter about Love, a bigger guy listed on 247 at 6'3", 195. Could he potentially move to linebacker? Because you don't have a whole lot of bodies in that room. I think they find ways for both of these guys to play to some extent.
Absolutely. I think, you look at like Caleb Wooden getting on the field this past year, Caden Bridges getting on the field early, even though he was a redshirt guy. Yeah, like you will play young safeties, and you can find different roles for him to use, especially with the nickel and dime packages and stuff like that. Both these guys, again, Sylvester Smith, Tennessee guy for a while, Auburn being able to flip him. Terrance Love has been committed, I think, probably longer than anybody else in this class.
Long time.
Other
than Brayden Jordan, I think.
Yeah, and so really good pickup there, both of those guys. Much like Kayin Lee, you can find pass for playing time for young DBs just because you need so many of them.
Right. Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer, our guest today. Let's touch on some of these interior offensive linemen, their path to playing time. Very, very interesting. Today's show brought to you by our friends at the NHTSA. It can happen easily. A few drinks become a few too many, and it's time to go, and you think of calling for a ride home, and you say, no, what's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, you lose your license, do you total your car, do you kill someone? Drive sober or get pulled over, especially focusing on that during the holiday season. Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer, what are folks missing out on right now if they're not currently subbed to the Auburn Observer?
Got a lot of basketball coverage, went out to the West Coast and covered them with USC and Washington. Obviously, Auburn's grinded out win on Wednesday night over Florida. We'll have plenty of basketball coverage moving forward, and also keeping an eye on football. Got the roster tracker if you want to keep track of everything, some of the stuff we're talking about here. Scholarship chart that we update, keep it updated as much movement as is happening over the last few weeks. And yeah, it's a big mailbag out on Friday. I had a story on Zach Etheridge. If you look at Zach Etheridge's recruiting numbers, it is crazy how much work that dude has done for Auburn in the last couple cycles. And so ton of stuff. AuburnObserver.com. It's $6 a month or $60 a year. You get all of our podcasts as well, and you get every newsletter sent straight to your email inbox.
All right, let's look at some of these interior offensive linemen. Clay Whedon, Braden Joyner, Connor Liu. If you had to put them in a bucket, start, play, or redshirt, what are you doing with these three guys?
I'm leaning redshirt for offensive linemen at freshman. I mean, that's just guys straight out of high school. It is so hard to play in the SEC in year one. You have to be a really, really rare talent. I'm not saying it's impossible for any of these guys, but it's just also on the interior. Auburn's got a little more experience coming back than they do at tackle. So I think they can kind of manage it. Now, you come in the spring, you compete, you might be able to turn some heads and surprise some folks. LSU started 2 true freshmen this year, and they won the SEC West on their offensive line. It's not impossible. So could they find a role? Yes. But more often than not, I usually just default to if you're a true freshman on the offensive line, you're going to need that time. You're probably going to take a redshirt year.
All right, are you like this across the board? So the tackles that we haven't talked about, Tyler Johnson, which is a kid coming out of high school, and then Izavion Miller, a little different with the JUCO guy. Do you think a similar situation with the offensive tackles in this class?
Well, not Izavion Miller, just because he's JUCO. I think JUCO you get JUCO guys because you think they can play right away, and they're not always going to play right away.
Sure.
Auburn's had some JUCO guys in the past not work out immediately. But yeah, Tyler Johnson may be a guy. I think Johnson's one of those dudes that I love his frame and I love just kind of what he brings to the table. Might take some time, just some polish there for him. Izavion Miller, definitely. Him and Dylan Wade, the transfer from Tulsa, those are guys that you can look at and say, okay, you can potentially pencil them in as starters next season because you're getting dudes with experience. And Auburn's got a lot more guys they want to go after in the portal and elsewhere on the offensive line. So Miller is the one I would probably put ahead of just because he is a JUCO player and you go get JUCO players for this reason. But yeah, if you're coming straight out of high school, I'm going to lean towards the fact that you're probably going to have to take a red shirt if you're a high schooler. But let's see. You'll see where the chips fall when it comes into spring practices and fall practices. New staff, new eyeballs. And look, it's not impossible. Like I said, LSU showed last year you can start some kids up there and still have success.
Do you think we're 3/5 of the way to forming the starting O-line with Wade and Miller at the tackles, like you said, and then I guess Jeremiah Wright at left guard? Do you think those are you feel pretty good about those? Yeah,
I think those are three guys you could feel like are probably going to be starters somewhere on this offensive line. You've got other guys that are potentially coming back or have some starting experience. Like what does Tate Johnson look like when he's fully healthy? If that's just somebody they want to turn back to at center, who knows? But they've got experience, and I do know that there are a number of transfers that Auburn's going to continue to try to recruit in the portal the rest of this window. And then keep in mind, after spring practice, there's going to be another round of guys who might potentially look at Auburn and say, well, I'm not going to start at my school right now. I might be the 6th or 7th offensive lineman at school X or Y. But, man, I could go to Auburn and potentially start right away. There's going to be some guys like that probably popping up in the portal after spring ball. So a little bit of a patient route there with your offensive line and how you have to build it out.
Is there an offensive lineman that we didn't really get to see last year that you're like, you know what? He could totally bust it and be great in the spring and be a starter this fall that we haven't really been able to see yet?
Colby Smith. I like Colby Smith. He's huge. He's the only tackle they have on this roster that's been in a 2 deep at any point. He hasn't played a lot yet, but he's been around the program for a little while. Maybe he's the guy. If I remember correctly, he was a 4-star coming out of high school. Like I like Colby Smith's upside. Yeah, there's some other guys that you can kind of poke around and see, but like Colby's the one that kind of stands out to me the most because there's such a need at tackle right now.
Do you think Auburn just gets as many tackles as they can, and then you could scoot guys inside the guard, or do you think they'll go out and get specific interior offensive linemen in the portal?
I think you could. I think you can get some swing. I think Dylan Wade's a swing guy. He's a little bit smaller for a tackle. If I remember correctly, he's like 6'4", 6'5", something like that. I think you want to lean
290.
Yeah, I think you want to lean more towards your tackles, and then some of those can naturally be swing guys if you want to play them on the inside.
Yeah, I just like the idea that it's probably going to be 4 out of the 5 guys are different, and like I'm fine with Jeremiah Wright being the guy that's coming back, which is weird. How like they didn't want to play him when he was like clearly the best guy, but they're like, no, let's bring him off the bench because that makes sense. So bizarre. But I think with like a full off season of like actually investing in him and not changing his position 3 times every off season.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think it could be a massive thing for him.
Yeah. When he was on his game, now he made some young player mistakes and stuff like that in the season, but like when he was on his game, he was a force in run blocking. And I think in the month of November when Auburn really started running the ball well, he was a big part of that.
Yeah, I'm there with you. As far as linebackers, Ferg, that's my biggest concern of this roster right now because I mean, you talked about it. Like there's a vision. There's like steps being taken to fix the O-line. There's not like an obvious answer for linebacker right now.
How do you
think they fix that?
You've got dudes, but you just haven't seen a lot of them. Like there are.
Do you?
I mean, you've got like guys like Robert Woodyard, guys you haven't seen as much of. Some of these transfers and guys like that you haven't seen play a lot. maybe you kind of
Who would you put into that pot though? So Woodyard,
Asante. Yeah, you
Okay.
didn't see much of him this year, and he had some of that. And then like you do have Cam Riley coming back. You do have Wesley Steiner coming back. Like you have guys, but like you don't have like, okay, this is we feel super confident about X, Y, and Z. At your linebacker spot. Yeah. I mean, you need depth. Obviously, you need more guys, and you could take some more experience for sure there. Yeah, that's the one position where you're kind of looking at it. You're like, I don't know what because even in the 2023 class, they had some guys they were going after, but it didn't really seem like inside linebacker wise there were things that they really felt like, oh, Auburn's got a really good shot at this guy. So yeah I mean, they've got. It's not like edge rusher where you just look around and it's like, oh, there's like really not anybody there. There are people there, and there's some guys with some experience or guys with some upside, but it's like putting it all together in a cohesive package. We just don't know how it's going to develop yet.
Do you feel comfortable going into the season with Cam Riley as your number one backer?
I think you could be. I think you could be. I think you need. I think you need to feel good about who you pair him with, and what that looks like moving forward. I thought Cam. There were games this season where he played really, really well, and there were games where it was kind of a struggle for the defense as a whole. I like what Cam Riley brings to the table. I just think it needs to, what's around him and kind of the shell around those linebackers is going to be just as important as the guys who are in there themselves. But yeah, if Auburn can go in and find a linebacker in the portal that they feel like could start right away. Sure, you feel good about that. I am a Cam Riley fan though, and I think that he showed some stuff, especially towards the end of the season when he got more playing time. That like, okay, there's something to this.
Yeah, Ron Roberts as a defensive coordinator, he's got a track record of linebackers being good. Under his watch, and the idea of Cam Riley's like reaction time being a little bit faster, like that's really exciting to think about.
Yeah, I mean Terrell Bernard at Baylor, he had some really good dudes. At Lafayette as well. Like he's got a track record and linebacker, what he does at linebacker, and then what they do with that star position, that do it all kind of DB that they've had the last few years.
Is that Kaufman?
Probably so. And that was a guy like you look back at Jalen Petrie, who's now with the Houston Texans. At Baylor, I mean, he was like leader and like tackles for loss for them. Like they do a lot of stuff with that group. So very inventive, and just how do you get creatively where you want to be? But yeah, linebacker is a position they got to get more talent in and got to shore up, and they've got time to do that.
Did Auburn dodge a bullet or maybe a train? We'll discuss that in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. For whatever Auburn merch, swag, memorabilia, whatever you need or want for you or for a family member or a loved one, be sure to check out our friends at Alumni Hall. They've got two great in-person stores in Auburn and Opelika. The Auburn one is on College Street. The Opelika one is in Tigertown. And they've got all kinds of stuff to search for. They've got great prices. And it's all officially licensed. You're getting the real stuff. You don't have to worry about the orange being a little off or the blue being a little too bright. It's all officially licensed stuff. You're getting the legitimate Auburn swag and memorabilia and gear that you want. And if you're out of town, you're like, man, that sounds great, but I can't make it to Auburn, Opelika, or anywhere in East Alabama for a while. Go to alumnihall.com. They've got a great website. They've also got other teams. If you're a mixed family when it comes to fan bases, be sure to check that out. Alumnihall.com, or check out their stores in Auburn and Opelika. Ferg, it's hard not to be on this side of the Auburn and Ole Miss dynamic and watch what is happening in Oxford, as ever since rumors and reports came out that Lane Kiffin and Auburn were talking. And look, this is coming from somebody who I wanted Lane Kiffin. I wanted Lane Kiffin 2 years ago when Gus was fired. I wanted him to go get Lane Kiffin. And ever since that happened, like, you just saw a demeanor change in Lane Kiffin, and they lost out essentially for their season. And then just seeing him on the sideline in Ole Miss's game against Texas Tech, I mean, it was just a disaster, Ferg. Like, it's just this dude that was kind of fiery and passionate has just kind of like shriveled up, and Ole Miss has looked terrible. over their last 4 or 5 games.
I do wonder how much seller's remorse that Lane Kiffin's going to have moving forward when it comes to not taking the Auburn job, because things have not gone well. They did not sign a very good recruiting class. They have not really made the transfer portal noise that they usually have. There's still time for that. Had their top quarterback commitment flipped to Texas A&M, which I know obviously irritated Lane, especially in the light of the Jimbo stuff with NIL and all that. It hasn't gone well for Ole Miss, and that's the thing. It's like, I think Lane Kiffin's a great coach. I think he's a great play caller. I take what has happened to Ole Miss in the last few weeks and months more of a thing on Ole Miss, that there are ceilings and caps that you are going to butt up against at a place like Ole Miss that might not be as much at a place like Auburn or a place like Tennessee or others, where I'm not talking Alabama, Georgia. I'm just talking about what that step up is, because Ole Miss is Ole Miss. Like, they beat Auburn this year, and they've had some really good teams over the last few years. Obviously, Hugh Freeze had success at Ole Miss, but like, they haven't won an SEC title in 60 years, and they haven't been to Atlanta for an SEC title. Like, there's stuff that's just kind of naturally you're going up against. And I think he's really, really kind of feeling it. Whereas if you go to a place like Auburn or some of these other places in the league or elsewhere in the Power 5, you have a higher ceiling just because, like, look around, man. Like, Auburn's been to championship games and have won championships. A lot of them since Ole Miss has gotten there. And so I don't think it's as much on Lane Kiffin as much as it's like, yeah, man, this is the reality of what happens if you decide to stay at Ole Miss.
Yeah, and that's obviously what he did. But it's just the whole saga between, like, Lane Kiffin and Auburn, the way he handled it so poorly with him ending up not taking the job, like, he ticked off the entire, like, Ole Miss fan base.
And they were ready to just be like, okay, I'm fine, let him go. And then it's like, he stays. It's like, no, well, okay, yay, we got him, we kept him, and then they just keep losing.
Yeah, all of the, like, there's a lot of people screenshotting message board posts, like, throughout the week, like, fire Lane Kiffin. We could have had Luke Fickell instead of this guy. And all this
Number one,
stuff.
No, you couldn't have. Let's get real. He went to Wisconsin. He didn't go to Ole Miss. Wisconsin's got some upward mobility there that Ole Miss doesn't have.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just. Look, I mean, it makes me wonder what happens with Lane, because this will be the longest he's stayed at a place. If he takes more than a year, I guess, left of his Ole Miss contract. So it's like, what does that look like? And, did the window of opportunity for him to step up potentially to a team that has a program that has a little bit more of a championship ceiling than Ole Miss, did that pass him by? Or is this just going to be kind of a bump in the road? At Florida Atlantic, he had that one really bad year, and then that next year he came out and caught fire again and ended up going to Ole Miss. So
yeah,
maybe it's one of those, but it is a rut. It is a big time rut for sure. And Texas Tech, that game never really felt close from what I could gather.
No.
And they had to do some, like, wild fourth down stuff just to even kind of hang around, it looked like.
Yeah, I went for it on, like, his own 11. I was on, like, 26. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I know the analytics or whatever, but still, just, you got to feel the game at some point. But whatever. No, I think one program is trending up and one is trending down over the last month or so.
I think even the most even and fair read of it is that, Ole Miss is not going in a direction that you want to go. And I think the recruiting thing is still the crazy one to me. It's like, you have Lane Kiffin, and your class, I think, was the worst in the SEC this cycle. Like, Auburn in a few weeks with Hugh Freeze just zipped right past them.
Yeah.
In recruit, like, that's not a great sign, and it doesn't seem like they're not having as much success right now. I should say right now in the transfer portal as they've done in the last couple of cycles. And, like, that has been kind of vital to their success. And maybe he gets a go, and maybe he lands some guys moving forward, but, like, the outlook isn't, like, rosy right now, and of course Ole Miss fans are taking it calmly and rationally.
Yeah. I mean, we can't talk, right? Like,
no one can. No one can.
Either, so.
No one can, man. I mean, like, hey, Alabama, like, there are folks mad at Nick Saban for potentially not getting rid of Bill O'Brien. And it's like, that okay, all right, cool. Just
Yeah.
signed the number one class in the country. He's the greatest coach who's ever lived in college football. And it's just like, yeah, but the coordinators are bad. And it's just like, okay, every fan base is crazy. It makes you a little bit more crazier when you don't have that same level of success as others do.
No, you're right. You're right. Ferg, one more time, how can people check out everything you got going on?
AuburnObserver.com, $6 a month, $60 a year. All of our newsletters, all of our podcasts get emailed to you. Whole lot of basketball on there and a lot of off-season football coverage. It's going to be a lot of fun. 2023 should be a pretty fun year for us, so sign up. Great time to do it.
Yep, that's right. Our final show of the year. We'll see you next year. This has been Locked On Auburn.